We could not mention Israel in any context. Let's talk about the media in this country, which of course that means the BBC, because the BBC is the media in this country. So it's getting worse at the moment.
Well, it's getting worse, but you've got to remember there's the literal meaning of things and there's like the doctrinal meaning of things. You know, this thing Chomsky talks about a lot, where he says, so like political comedy literally to us means, you know, Bill Hicks, George Carlin, people talking about politics. But doctrinally, political comedy means satire in Britain. It means people having a bit of a go at the coalition, saying that there shouldn't really be cuts, not talking about things like war or Gaza or any huge kind of political touchstones. You know, so there's a doctrinal don't talk about that. That's accepted by most people if you want to get on TV. Or...
Yeah, because there's a stranglehold in media with the BBC. So how come there's so little media diversity? In the print page, there's different print, you know, left-oriented print newspapers somewhat compared to the U.S. But a lot of people here would say that doesn't exist, that The Guardian is just very, you know, just a little bit less to the right than, let's say, The Telegraph. Sure. But compared to the U.S., there is kind of this left-wing. But on TV, however, it's all right-wing. There's no left at all on TV because it's all dominated by the BBC. And I was just reading a documentary about BBC, in fact, hides taxes through the Netherlands, just like Starbucks and Google and all these other companies. So they're just a corporate slime bucket as well. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, you've got a situation really where if you look at certain things being reported by the BBC, so if you look at something like Israel-Palestine or something, you can see a great deal of what would seem to be institutional bias there. And it's a great institution in some other ways. I mean, compared to television in America, I think it offers a lot more than you can get in any commercial channel in America. But at the same time, you've got to recognise the role it plays in Britain in propaganda. You know?
Well, when we were doing a show for BBC World News called The Article with Max Kaiser a couple of years ago, we only had one editorial direction, and that is we could not mention Israel in any context.
Right, sure.
That's the only thing we heard from the BBC.
I retweeted Max Kaiser's tweet where he announces that he quit that job because of the suppression. Let's use this platform to expose Israel's crimes, which TV executives have been suppressing from the public. TV executives responsible for suppressing facts about Israel have blood on their hands, because their suppression is largely responsible for why the majority of Americans aren't contacting their representatives to demand that their government stop supporting Israel's violations of humanitarian law. Israel's killing has reached such appalling and disgraceful extremes that the U.S. State Department actually issued a statement saying so. The United States is appalled by today's disgraceful shelling outside a United Nations Relief and Works Agency school in Rafah, shelling some 3,000 displaced persons, in which at least 10 more Palestinian civilians were tragically killed. The coordinates of the school, like all UN facilities in Gaza, have been repeatedly communicated to the Israeli Defense Forces. We once again stress that Israel must do more to meet its own standards and avoid civilian casualties. That's a little naive. I don't think they understand what the standards are. But UN facilities, especially those sheltering civilians, must be protected and must not be used as bases from which to launch attacks. And we haven't been presented with any evidence that that's the case. But they go on to say, the suspicion that militants are operating nearby does not justify strikes that put at risk the lives of so many innocent civilians. We call for a full and prompt investigation of this incident, as well as the recent shelling of other United Nations Relief and Works Agency schools. We continue to underscore that all parties must take feasible precautions to prevent civilian casualties and protect the civilian population and comply with international humanitarian law. And as Chomsky points out, attacks on UN compounds sheltering refugees is another Israeli specialty. I'll put a link to that recent article by Chomsky in the video description, as well as links to actions you can take, which include contacting your representative and demand that they adhere to U.S. law, the Leahy Law, which prohibits further military aid to Israel. The United States is aiding and abetting Israel's crimes. It's against U.S. law to give military assistance to a country that's carrying out violations of humanitarian law. That's an action you can take. Please use the YouTube tools to share this video, because we can use this platform to get that message out. We can take actions.